Hello, can you see me? Can you hear me okay? Excellent. Well and good. I have, I have Facebook up as well.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Dope guys. I'm muting.
You guys, can you hear me swallowing? Okay. I just have a drink on the side. Loud and clear. Hmm? Say it again. You were saying? Okay. Mm-hmm.
Kevin, are we going to be able to see you? Oh, got it. All right.
Hmm.
Right on, Joe. He's a true friend.
Yeah, I can explain. Yeah, it all it all began when suddenly I say actually because of our our interests, our paths were bound to. I don't know if I believe in destiny, but I think paths were bound to our paths were bound to cross because of our common interests. Not just common interests. We all have common interests, but the common passion to which it gets us out of the house and into these events. It could be nightclubs. It could be nightlife living. It could be recreation festivals. It could be conventions. And I think that's how we first met. I saw the pictures, by the way. I saw the pictures, by the way. Wow. Hmm.
Okay.
Uh, Kevin, I always keep thinking that there's a time zone difference between where you live and where I live because your room is so dark because it's adequately lit for broadcast, and mine isn't. I mean, it's like you're an ice station zebra, and I'm happy hour at a tiki bar. Well, mhm. I said, yeah. Well, it took we had our June gloom routine with we get bright sunshine, but not until after 11 o'clock in the morning. And sure. Hmm. Well, yeah. I think plus I get the desert heat is the fragrance from all the cleaning chemicals from cleaning out my apartment. This is this this is the last weekend I will be broadcasting from Oakland, California. When next we convene, I shall be broadcasting from the hills of Berkeley, California, overlooking scenic San Francisco Bay.
Very nice.
That sounds nice.
It I seized upon an opportunity, so and I grabbed it. So I'm looking to better. I'll be a better living situation. I'm grateful for the apartment I've had now. It's been great and wonderful, but essentially I'll be moving to a small mansion about 500 feet above sea level with a pretty good view of the Golden Gate Bridge. So I'll have to persevere.
Struggle
nice.
on. All right, it's 5 o'clock. I'm going to start the opening music, and then I'm going to do an intro. And once I'm done with the intro, I'll go into the guest phase. I have a sort of post guest announcement, secondary intro, and then I'll bring you guys on. So during any time I'm playing music, such as the intro, realize that your audio will go out to the world. So pause until you're called.
There's very little left of me. I'll wander through the world like this, never knowing when to turn. Can you see through my eyes and know that it's something that will turn around? We'll be standing with our feet on the ground. I know someday it'll turn back again, and we'll see that it wasn't such a crime. But now I'm crying, lying, dying, and there's no one here to save me now. So whisper to me goodbye, say it was all a lie. We won't be coming back here no more. It's gonna be like a summer breeze going through my mind, time and time again. Hey buddy, do you know the score? I used to know a girl who had lust for it each day like a chore. Well, I couldn't find a home there. I had to be aware and follow my heart's desire. Will you forgive me when it's time to move on to another stage? 'Cause I've not forgiven myself. Sometimes that's the way it goes when you know that you've made a mistake, but you're too far down the road would you take me back if I begged you?
Welcome, everybody, to Sunday Live. Hope you've had a great weekend, and thank you for joining us here. That was Take Me Back off of my first solo album, Brilliant Dreams. And that was me trying to scarf down too much ramen and having to do a little belch there. As you know, I have three main band projects. There is the Caleb Band, of which that was a B-side, an album track on the first album that went on to get 3 million plays on YouTube and some commercial or whatnot. You just never know which child is going to succeed. As I mentioned recently, the Tapestry album, which was the instrumental versions from the Brilliant Dreams album, went out a couple weeks ago. Wizard on the Stairs Acoustic went out last weekend, and we're working on more acoustic versions of not only Caleb songs, but Audio Terrace songs. In addition, I am working to produce a new single for Cuir Bleu, an electronic fun dance plus moody band with a female lead singer. And of course, there's the ever-present Audio Terrace that I've been, in one form or another, been running since 2000. I'm really dating myself a little too young there. 1984. That's over 35 years, I think. And those projects, there's a ton of new singles. The last single from the Who Are You album is coming out in the next couple months, and then we'll be releasing It's the End, which is the first single from the Resonator album. In addition, we're getting soundtracks out for Caleb and Audio Terrorist to the World this month. Thank you, everybody, for joining the chat. As you can see, as always, we have the chat right here in the stream. Feel free to add to the chat on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitch, and it should aggregate right up here on this screen. And without further ado, this week's guest is about remembering Barbara DeGeneieve. Barbara passed away a few years ago, but was a... That's my ring saying that someone's at the front door and barking. It's probably an Amazon package. Let me turn off the ringer. Barbara was my mentor for my master's degree. And as you know, with each show, I associate 3 words with the person that we're going to be talking about that day. And with Barbara, I went with artist, provocateur, professor, and provocateur. I'd say provocateur was her foundation, a big part of what she believed in. But at the very top of that was being an artist. And in the middle, bridging that, was teaching other people how to be artists and to be a little more provocative and less, shall we say, provincial. There's a quote by Barbara. As an academic, I feel I should intellectualize and theoretically analyze when all I really want to do is let the work take me somewhere, manipulate me, and then rough me up a bit. When it comes right down to it, I only want to spend time with work that makes me think and teaches me something while making my body react. And I think that sums up Barbara very well and her philosophy. Now, how I met Barbara is I had gone into clinical psychology as my bachelor's degree. And as you know from my earlier episodes with Dan Wyman, during the course of that degree, I essentially finished a bachelor in electronic music in addition to that. And after my 6 years getting my degrees, I was not entirely sure I wanted to continue on with clinical psychology. And Dan put the earworm in my head. He said, "Have you ever considered you might be an artist?" Luckily for me, there was a new program in multimedia computing going on, starting up in the art department at San Jose State University. And with my technical background, my multimedia that I had done in the recording studio and on the Apple Macintosh HyperCard, I got in, and suddenly I was an art student. But my art up to that point had been pretty what I'd say focused on something else. It either referenced fandom in music and art and science fiction, natural environments, girlfriends, flowers, cats, that sort of thing. And when I met Barbara, she took a look at my art and she looked to me and said, "But where are you?" Ooh, that stopped me in my tracks. And I decided to turn all that psychology and that camera back onto myself. So I started posing for pictures and doing some nudes, semi-nudes, and really removing all the facades of society from my images. And I started talking about my own challenges with attention deficit disorder and other things I was going through physically in my work. This led me to start doing gallery shows and performances, and eventually led me to my first real gallery show that my friend Carla helped me get going. And Carla did one other thing. One day she handed me a book called Wilhelm Reich, The Evolution of His Work. This book would change my life and be the foundation for my final thesis. It discussed how the true aspects of the nervous system made organisms that were relaxed flow, open up, and expand, like if you've ever seen an amoeba under a microscope. But when attacked, when violated, when under threat, contract. As you can see from this video from my thesis room, there was all this barbed wire around this contracted, round organism in the middle of the room. And as people interacted with the room, the barbed wire actually audio screamed at you as you got near it. It was a giant theremin. So you could potentially play music if you were good enough at it, and in this space. So you're interacting with danger that's making music, and you're interacting with an object that's contracting from concern of threat. So that was the idea, the foundation idea behind my thesis. And Barbara, as I said, was one of my co-sponsors, Dan Wyman, who's in earlier episodes, the composer of the soundtrack for a bunch of motion pictures and favorite bands of mine. They both co-signed my master's, signed me off, and I got out of San Jose State with a master's degree, which was awesome. And so that's the background. As each one of these shows are not only about my friends and collaborators who I've worked with over the years and showing their work, it's also about the interconnection between their work and my work and how over time, in seemingly random ways, we've reconnected. And Barbara, working with Barbara is no different, and folks who are her students still pop up on my Facebook feed. And I thought, this is a key moment in my life. Again, unfortunately, Barbara has passed away, unlike my other guests. So I thought, how could I do this? And I asked around a couple friends if they'd be willing to join in on Zoom to talk about Barbara and our experiences with her. So first of all, I'd like to introduce Joe Price. Joe Price, hello. How the heck you doing?
How do you do?
Doing good. It looks like Carla has dropped off. Let's find out what's going on there. But yeah, thank you for agreeing to join each one of the episodes as my sidekick moving forward. We had an episode a couple weeks ago where it was largely me talking about my own work, and it was very strange to be in a quiet room talking about my work and reading things on the screen and then talking to you all. So I asked Joe if he'd be willing to join in and be my plant.
Yeah, it's good to be here. I've enjoyed enjoyed being on the episodes thus far, and interacting with the various guests. It's been very enlightening. Last week was the most enlightening. We were here at all hours of the night after the show, the three of us. So it's going to be a weekly bad habit, as it were, and it's one that's hard to break. So nice. Here I am.
Well, thank you. I do have a guest who I mentioned in my intro, but they seem to have dropped off Zoom. Oh, they're back. Hey, Carla. Up. Hey, Carla, you there? I hear touching of a microphone.
Sorry.
No problem. Hey, Carla, how the heck you doing?
I was on Facebook.
Well, you're back. You're
Hey.
back on Zoom.
Great introduction and
Thank
great
you.
synopsis of your Barbara experience and how you got into art. I was impressed.
Did you hear your call outs?
I did. You know, I live in the now, Kevin. I don't remember a lot of stuff. I don't.
Well, I wasn't entirely sure you gave me the book, and this morning I suddenly realized, oh, wait a minute, that was Carla. And then, you know, all these years on, I go, am I really remembering that accurately? And I've just decided when I say something like that, it is.
I think that's a great place to be.
Be in the present, folks. The opening track, "Take Me Back," is I put that on this episode because it has this tug between the past, present, and future implied in it, and I really feel like my grad school academic time, it flavored everything that came after it, but it's so long ago, I sometimes forget that it ever existed.
I can imagine. I mean, just seeing that clip and the balloon and the bob wire and the sound was really was made such an impression. I believe that it was perfect for the time and place.
We're going to talk a little bit about postmodernism as the show goes on, and time and place. That was an interesting time in the arts because you had this in the late 80s and early 90s, maybe into the mid 90s. There definitely was, everything had to have edge, right? To be validated in the art world, you had to have something that was a little grating or had teeth.
Absolutely. It was.
And I find over time there was a cartoon I was shown about that time that had an art professor that said, "And in conclusion, my class, cats, draw cute cats." And then looking back, I'm like, you know, if you want to be a commercial artist, yeah, draw cute cats. You're going to sell more postcards probably than paintings. Now, do you continue?
What about gold-plated monkeys?
Gold-plated monkeys. Now you're breaking back. Oh yes, the postmodern Jeff Koons.
Jeff Koons.
You could take a photograph of someone else's, hand it to a ceramic artist or a metal artist, and say, "Make that in this," and then you put it in the gallery, put your name on it. You're good to go.
Shades of Andy Warhol.
Yeah, I think Warhol played a role in that. You know, that Warhol did it in the manufacturing way, right? Which is who really built that car, right? You have an assembly line. Nobody really built the car. Everybody built the car. I think with Koons, it was, I'm the artist. I have an idea, and I have the money to execute this idea and have the relationships to get it in a gallery. I don't need to touch it. I don't need to be the one who actually manufactures it at all. So in a sense, it's not a Warhol, everybody's a part of this factory. It's, I'm going to give a craftsman something, but when it's completed, because it was my idea, it then becomes art.
Kevin?
Yeah, what's up?
You know, I just had this thought today that I would be a much more successful person if people actually executed my ideas.
You know, I have quite often thought about ruling the world and what that would take. I've just got a notification that Zoom no longer allows us to have 3 people for over their 40-minute limit. Like we were on 3 hours last week. So in 10 minutes, we're going to get cut off and have to all rejoin.
Okay.
Just a heads up. Yeah, I mean, it's a interesting position because it talks a lot about the power of money. If Jeff Koons didn't have people that were willing to pay to make this stuff for him, he wouldn't have a career. So I don't know which came first. Did he schmooze everybody to get the money to do the projects, or did he already have the capital and come in as a kind of like a Victorian upper class woman who pays her way to get into a gallery show? I'm not quite sure how he got started.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we could save that for another show.
I think so. I was going through this episode and setting up. I'm like, there's so much I want to put in this that crosses over between other episodes. And at a certain point, you have to draw the line to say, each episode gets so much attention and so much media. Now, Carla, I have a question. I talked about Barbara, and her pivotal influence was getting me to turn the camera on myself. What would you say was her pivotal influence on you?
Kevin, I really can't say. I would say that I was really devastated to hear about her passing. It was just too soon, I felt. And it hadn't occurred to me that anybody in my life would really disappear. So I was really moved by her passing. I've gone back, I've looked at her films, her art, and I've tried to get something that meant something to me that holds to my values today. And I just say that her art doesn't necessarily make me happy. It's not a nice thing to say.
I don't think Barbara would want you to say nice things.
This is true. I mean, listening to your description or her description of herself and what she was trying to achieve. Yeah, she put me in uncomfortable places, talking about uncomfortable things. And I don't know that I ever got any value out of it. I still, to this day, I don't know that it's made me grow.
I think there is the moment that now you took her classes, but you weren't was she a sponsor of a master's or a bachelor's? Sorry. Yeah.
No, she wasn't. She really, really wasn't a mentor to me. And I think for you had a very special and different relationship. I had more of a public view of her, what just any average person might see. And so I didn't know her intimately. And I think that it's fair to say that we have different experiences of her. And that's okay.
Looking at, you mentioned videos and whatnot. I'd love to see clips. I just searched around on YouTube and I found only 2 small clips that I've included in today's show. But if there's other works, I would be interested in seeing it and getting that other perspective. Yeah, I had 3 people on my master's: Joel Slayton, Dan Wyman, and Kathleen Cohen. And what happened was, first of all, Joel didn't want me in the program at all, even though I ended up, funny enough, rescuing a couple of his do-what-dos later on from stages collapsing by holding the legs of the stage up while the performers would have fallen flat on their face in front of the City Council of Palo Alto. Little things I do. And so we never got along. We never connected. So that was like neutral. And Kathleen got me in the program, and then Kathleen broke her arm. She fell, so she was out of the picture for a little bit, and she was really having me work on multimedia, like CD-ROMs of art history and stuff like that. And then I just happened to take requisite photography class, and it happened to be Barbara. And she happened to put this question out to me and challenge me. And so she actually swapped in becoming my sponsor for my master's after Kathleen, because by the time Kathleen came back, I'd already done a few performance art pieces that Barbara liked. I had changed my photographic style and started showing the work that I had done, that I'd been a fan of, and I had done sort of on the side, but really wasn't public about. And of course, she loved that stuff. So that sort of took over. It wasn't like I sought Barbara out to be a mentor and joined the program to develop that aspect. It was really a complete coincidence on one part and arrogance on my hand, because I think when she told me that basically all my art sucked and I needed to look at myself and blah 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 and was challenging me, I decided I was going to push back, and I did a performance art piece that was exactly designed to not impress her. I don't come from that headspace, but to show her there's more here than you've given credit to. It was like a little more back in your face, and so we sort of challenged each other and butted heads like that. And as a sponsor, once she was officially my master sponsor, yeah, I was coming into her home and seeing her not in professor mode, but just as a person and an artist, and engaging with her as a mentor, but also as a peer, which I think was very different. Seeing this video clip of her, brief video clip of her interviewing, I do believe that she had a professor facade she felt she had to have that didn't always benefit her.
Yeah, and I can imagine that being in that space, sacred inner circle, gave you a lot of fearlessness. That's not the right word, tense, but to start exploring some things that you may or may not have ever considered to explore. I think that's one thing that she gave a lot of people, the opportunity to explore things that may not necessarily have ever ventured in their pathway before. There's a couple of artists in school that I think of who I'm not going to say encouraged, but felt their art was the right thing for them to do at that time, and it was okay because Barbara gave them a safe space to do it, and they had some repercussions. Maybe they were arrested, for instance, for doing something. I don't know. I mean, and I can't speak for that person and how they feel about it today, or how they even felt about it at that very moment. But just remembering that she was just totally on the edge. I mean, look at today. Here we are. What you said, 35 years later, here we are talking about pride. Pride's like almost a thing of the past. Now it's about all LGBT, transgender rights and things like that. So, where would we be if we had not had her talking about gender, about identity, and how fluid that can be given the right opportunities, and that it is all sort of more of a social rule that we're following. I'm female, you're male. I do this, you do that, and that plays really well to your psychology training as well, right?
Yes,
so of course,
yes. I think I had an advantage
We are about to
over
take
a lot of. What's up, Joe?
We are about to take a station break. I'm getting less than 1 minute on Zoom. We can,
yes.
Of course, join.
All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show a little video of Barbara, and so folks get some context around what Carla and I are talking about, and I will then stop the Zoom and restart it and add you guys back in. All right, folks, here is a video of Barbara DeGeneive discussing her work.
So you feel the work's always been edgy and always consciously difficult for some people to deal with?
I'm not sure if it was conscious on my part for it to be edgy. I mean, I needed it to be edgy for myself, and I needed to deal with certain aspects of the culture that related to me as a woman. I don't think I always made work so that it would annoy people, but I think it usually did, including the people I went to graduate school with and worked with in graduate school.
So do you feel like you've been challenging taboos since graduate school?
I would hope so. I mean, I think that's a large thing to say you take on, but yeah, I would like to think that that's what I've been doing.
What are the words you use to describe your activity? Is it transgression, aggression, confrontation? Are those words that you would use to describe your work?
Again, I think that's taking on a large responsibility, and I think other people have used those words to describe it. I'm not sure if I would want to describe it that way. I think I describe it mostly as analysis and a challenging of myself. Yeah, I do want to challenge the culture, and I do want them to be all those things that you mentioned, but I'm not sure if I want to label them in that way.
You mean you
It
just
seems a
want
little pretentious for me to label them in that way. But
so you just want to be a country mouse?
No, I don't want to be a country
quietly
mouse.
telling your story.
Well, sure.
All right, that was an interview with Barbara that I thought was short and direct and to the point about her own views of her work and the controversy around her work and how she felt or didn't feel that she was a provocateur. I agree with Carla. I think she was definitely a provocateur, and that interview, it's like she's trying to express that it's provocateur is a side effect of her analytical approach to art, and I'd say I don't buy it. What do you say, Carla? I think Carla might be muted. No? She's probably watching on a delay. It is a little disorientating to watch this just on delay. Can you hear me, Carla?
Sorry, I'm getting both little bit of feedback. Do I buy that she's a provocateur and she's doing it to be a provocateur?
Oh no! Do you buy the innocence? I heard in that interview kind of her saying, I'm not attempting to be provocative. I'm just being analytical about culture.
I think in that interview it looked a little early, so maybe she wasn't. There were factors that were making her appear a little more apologetic about what she was trying to do, coy. I do see some of that in her, and I would just say that the Vimeo, is it the YouTube alternative video platform, Venmo? Yeah, she's got some videos on there, and I think Desperado is about a 30-minute video, and I am no Barbara expert, but believe me, I haven't really thought about her art in a really long time, so I'm just really winging it here. I just found that she appeared less vulnerable, if you will. Sorry, my foot's falling asleep.
No problem. And thank you for that. I know this was like digging through the bin, and I'm like, this is something that last time I saw Barbara, I had long hair. I think it was 98, maybe 99, right before I cut off my hair. And I went out and visited her in Chicago and stayed with her for a while on my way to somewhere. I think I was heading to Europe on a business trip, and or maybe Boston. And so I had some time and swung by and said, hey, I want to kind of check in with her after 4 or 5 years. And we went to the gym. We talked about what work she's doing now, what her philosophy changes are, how it's developed. And I don't know, I think that Midwest girl, slay me for saying this, I think that was always still there. I think, I'm still the boy from San Jose that grew up with parents listening to country music, and no matter how much electronic music I do, it still has that. I'm not from Ibiza or London. And so I think those things still bubble up in us and how we present ourselves. But she definitely had at that point gone from exploring what she was exploring with us to exploring more and more extreme cultures. And she was letting me know about, all these logical threads that go places. And I felt like at that point, I don't know where she could go, because it was like the end of the philosophical line where you stretch the string so much, it snaps and then it has no meaning. So yeah, that was the last time I saw her. So I found out that after she had passed on Facebook, someone posted, and I saw that she had passed. It was only yesterday I found out that they did a memorial in San Jose, and I saw pictures of it. Wasn't ever contacted. So even though she was, my grad school professor who had this big influence on me, she had tons of students, and other than that one personal hanging out and sense that we had some sort of lasting connection, there was never any outreach between the two of us.
I think it's really wonderful how you described to me the chain of events that happened because of that one person. And I think that is where the magic is, and how we can all just sort of find a moment, a person in our life that has done that for us, that has literally changed our lives.
Amen to that. And I would say that a friend of mine challenged me to do this show when we all got locked down after I'd done a concert performance online. And she said, "Hey, you've got so much music. You should be doing this every week." And I thought about it, and I said, really what I want to do, if I'm going to talk about my work, I want it to have some context. And I'm working with all these people who don't necessarily have a platform or don't necessarily get out there and show their work. And I thought, well, all these people have had that connection. They've opened a door for me. Like you just giving me that Reich book, I now realize just that, oh yeah, I found this paper book. You might find it interesting. That moment opened up what my thesis became, and opened up me getting to theremins. I've got a couple behind me, these musical instruments with antennas. So there's a whole ripple effect to what we do and how we engage with people. And it's not just Barbara. So I see this series of episodes as honoring each one of those moments. And it was only about a half hour before I started doing a sound test where I realized that this episode was honoring you as well as Barbara. Because you had agreed to do the show, and we had thrown out there for a bunch of other people to potentially do. Didn't hear anything back. And I remember that time was a challenge, and it might not be remembered fondly in some ways. And the fact that you would still do the show, and then once I remembered, and the book, and that's what the thesis was based on, those puzzle pieces all snapped together.
It's amazing. It reminds me, Kevin, of the novel or book, The Celestine Prophecy.
Oh yes, I've read it.
I read that book in the 90s, probably 98-ish, and all these connections leading to, and sometimes we forget that. We get busy, we get working in our lives, and we forget those magical moments that are intangible, really.
I had a nice opportunity this last year and a half to resign from my corporate job, a nice, well-paying, secure thing, and to, light's gone on strobe mode. I guess that's the danger symbol for getting rid of your corporate job. And I had a couple lucky moments, and I was sitting in a bar talking to a relative of a friend who is a relative of mine. Long story. And they said, "Oh, well, you can do this." And I'm like, "What? I could do this?" Yeah, you do this, and you could take a year and a half off. I was so entrenched in the idea that I had to be making that salary and and that money, and because of this and this and this, the idea that I could just go, yeah, I'm going to take a break. Now, I took a break for about 2 months and started running my friend's software company, but that's another side story for his episode. Although, because Barbara did what she did, and I started messing with gender images, led me to make some images that led me to do a gallery show, that led this person to see the gallery show when they moved to the United States, that led me all these years later to start running his software company.
I think you should do a diagram because it's
All these key checkpoints. We've been talking about Barbara's art, and that was an interview with her. I want to show some of that art to our guests and see what they're thinking about it.
sounds good.
So these are some pieces that were installed, I believe, around 2014. Some of the earlier work that I recognized, some of it later work. And this one's where she had people cut off their hair and hang it in the gallery. Some projected work. She did do some multimedia, but she was mainly a photographer, mainly doing photographic images, and definitely presented herself in a lot of these images, or would do something abstract that was more provocative and textural.
I could see from the imagery here where and why she prompted you with your artwork. Where were you in the artwork? Because it's evident where she's coming from.
Yeah, I know that she went on a long journey to arrive to the place that she was at where we met her. That certainly involved all aspects of culture and playing all sorts of roles in culture and going through this experiences and deciding that she didn't want to partake in certain aspects or in certain ways of being presented. So, but it was never truly vulgar. Her work might push a little button, and for a country homeboy like me, it definitely stretched me and said, hey, you're going to be exploring some stuff some of your family members aren't going to like. And I really had to take a leap at that time. But finishing my clinical psychology degree, I already was on that edge, because what happens when you're getting a clinical psych degree is towards the end, you are broken down. You are put in a room, a small room, with 6 other students twice a week for an hour and a half being observed. And then for an hour and a half, the observer comes in and comments on what they saw to break you down. It is like psychological warfare. So I had gone through that a year to a year and a half before I met Barbara. So I was primed in a position to sort of not give a flip about anything anymore by the time I had that engagement. So yeah, I was able to, I think what I'm trying to say is I think there were all these threads that were already going. I was already growing out my hair. I was already getting rid of a car to ride a bicycle to school. I was already sort of shaking things up in my own life before that happened. So I was primed for the information that came after. And again, as I said, it wasn't just Barbara, but it was all the students and people around me, including Carla. And I did have some photographs I wanted to share of some of the students, but again, not knowing how they felt about it, I was like, well, maybe not. And also I ran out of time. So maybe we'll do a follow-up episode and maybe a follow-up secondary after party where we'll show some of her other work and show you kind of context of the times. Now, the other thing that Carla and I suffered through, I'd say being a little outrageous, even though I really didn't notice it until I showed my parents, or a cousin wanted to see my art gallery, and I went, oh, I don't know so if you're going to like my album. And I'll be frank, one reason why there is Audio Terrace, Group Blue, and Caleb is because I have these different sides. And Caleb is, music my parents can listen to, my cousins can listen to, and that's an aspect of my personality, but only one. But what was really tough for a dyslexic attention deficit child, even with a psychology background, even with philosophy department at San Jose State asking me to write their charter because I was so into philosophy, when I hit what Barbara threw at us, it was like being hit in the head with a sledgehammer. All this third wave feminism that I had never heard of, postmodern art, which I was aware of, neo-Freudianism, I didn't know it was coming back in style, and all of this deconstruction, I think I read more philosophy and psychology under Barbara than I did during my psych degree. What do you think, Carla? Is that the case for you?
Well, I just noticed, Bell Hooks, who, has been writing some really great forward-thinking feminism for a long time. And all of that stuff, all of that philosophy stuff was just over my head. My eyes rolled back into my head. It was
it was intense. I remember. Do you remember the weekend I had it with it? Like because I had a background in all this, I was like, oh yeah. I was eating up. Okay, it's giving me new ideas and all this stuff. And the weekend I had it was when I spent the entire weekend. I don't know, was it Derrida, Foucault? I can't remember. It was a article that we were to read over the weekend and discuss in class on Monday. And I couldn't read it. I just was going over and over and tearing it apart and trying to figure out how to consume it. And then she revealed on Monday the whole thing was written in a way that you can't understand it, but it seems like you're understanding it, to show you that language is an illusion of understanding when you don't really understand anything. And that was the whole point of the exercise. Oh, I was livid.
painful. I've had some jobs like that too.
Yeah, I definitely had some management like that. And so at that point is when the percolation of the Dingenstein joke came about, started percolating in my head because I'd kind of had it. So I knew if she was going to do that to my weekend, I was going to take some pushback and take something out of her hide. And I don't know if you recall this, but by the end, Kathleen, me, a couple other people, I don't know if you were on that team or if you were on a different team, but we all had different teams where we had to pick one theoretical philosopher, cultural theorist, and do stuff about it. Presentations, performance art, and art. So I invented Herr Dingenstein, this philosopher, because she knew everything and she knew everyone. And, the guests who came and visited us were on the cutting edge of culture, from transgenderism to this and that. And that's where genderfuck came from, was Susan Stryker who had a session with us. And I've used that word on a couple songs and stuff. But
I got to let my dog out. Hold on 1 second.
All right. Hey, Joe.
Yes.
What are your thoughts so far?
I think that your mentor picked fights with you to pick dialogue with you and to get you to think, to get you out of your comfort zone in the worst way. Almost to the point of testing your relationship with your professor. But it seemed to have worked. It seemed to work. It rousted you out of any possible complacency and taking you out of comfort zones. And I think that's reflected in some of her work. Is not to make people especially comfortable, to look at her work and go, what the hell is that? That may be exactly what she was trying to evoke, But, getting people to think, getting the people to like you is one thing. Getting people to think is another. And getting you to think as a student and passing that on. It wasn't a popularity contest, to be sure, but that's exactly, she was all the more on point for that, I think, from what I'm hearing.
And it was, I think
that's great. Sorry.
You're back.
Joe,
the dog's out.
Well, so one of my dogs is on medicine, and she's reminding me that it's time for her medicine. So I'm 45 minutes late.
Uh-oh.
But Joe, I think that is a very astute summary. And at the time we weren't as removed. We were in it, and it was a psychological trip sometimes. Really trying to.
I've had this as kind of relationships with karate instructors, for example, and even mentors working on bikes of late that have kept me on point as to my, what I'm doing here in the first place with what I'm doing. be it karate or being with bike mechanics, and it's made me a better person as a result. I think it's made Kevin better at what he's after as a result.
And I think in a martial art, or if you now you're making me think about it, because I was already on a kind of martial art journey as well, coming into it, and that prepared me for that engagement and how I was going to push back and how I was going to absorb what was coming at me. And I don't think that it was ever overtly stated that that's what was going on. In a martial art, which I've taken several, you come in, you know you're going to get pushed. You go to the gym as a gym trainer, you know you're going to get pushed. I don't know if everybody coming to a photography class knows that they're going to get pushed and, as Carla said, potentially arrested.
Yeah. It's funny, with training with my old instructor, it was, like getting everything but kicked in the butt for doing something wrong. In later years, before he passed away, over the phone, transcontinental phone conversations, I'd ask him about something. And he said, well, do it this way. Try this, put a little curve on it this way, and you'll find out you'll get a better result with something. Say a side kick, for example, how to throw it askew from what its original intention was, and then you do it perfectly. By not quite following the rules, by not quite following the protocol, stepping out of the box a little bit, you get a better idea of what you should do, or at least a better idea of your compass in your journey. And I think that's exactly what's going on with the artwork that we've seen just now.
What do you think, Carla?
Well, I think a lot of art is about a discipline that you learn. Music, for instance, has a certain set of rules to it, and you learn it in a certain way. So there's a tradition there, and you draw in drawing, whether music, art, and I think photography. It was very much at the very end of its peak. It kind of almost was over, right? There was other mediums that were surpassing what photography had started at the turn of the century. And I think it kind of was suffering, and other elements started to come in. And I personally was always drawn to alternative media, where we, did things to manipulate the photography itself. And, it really became multimedia, not just photography. And I think the intellectualizing it, bringing in all of these other things, and sometimes I felt, a little lost. Sometimes I wanted to just have some craft and some technique that I could, fall back on and be sure of. But, to always be unsure isn't a good place either. I think Kevin had an advantage because he had all that psychology, and that was her thing.
She definitely was an intellectual, and I found in conversations could get lost into the intellectual idea of something as a way of validating it. Like, this photographic image is good art because Jacques Lacan once said in a cafe in Paris that this is how language works, and it's based on that. And sometimes you can see that connection or how one influenced the other, but sometimes it seemed like justification.
And what a weird connection. What a weird way to justify photography in a way. Photography be visual. Think of Ansel Adams and his own method. And then you think, Barbara intellectualizing it with, language theory. It's kind of interesting cross-section.
And thank you for your statement about where photography was at, because I came in this from multimedia. So to me, it was just like my pinky. I was just getting more information on how the pinky works, because that was just one of my tools in my toolkit. I wasn't a photographer. I wasn't a photography student. And that's a really great point, was as soon as you were saying, well, photography was kind of over, I'm like, you're right, it was. I was working at the San Jose Mercury News at the time, and as a gopher, and so I got to know everybody. I knew everybody in the art department, everybody in the photography department, and I got to watch that whole institution just melt down. Journalism died, and the photography department died. Suddenly, they didn't need photography department because everything was on the AP wire and being printed out digitally right into the paper. You didn't need them to go out and take a photograph of the story. Became the opinion. It was, you just need AP stories to fill in the spaces between the Sears ads. And a good headline, because there's this guy who would write these headlines that had double meanings, and that was all he did. He wrote these double meaning headlines, and that tickled him pink. But the rest of the newspaper was was becoming more and more fluff, less journalism, less photojournalism was dying. They're just, give me a picture. I remember there were several articles where I went and picked the picture from the photo library, this big bank, this machine that had photographs on paper, and I saw them come out in the newspaper. So you got a photojournalist in the back, and then you got the clerk, and the clerk is picking the pictures for the newspaper. And I think the whole industry went that way, where it became more cookie cutter. So I wasn't even thinking about where the industry was and where photography was at that time. So I went right into digital photography, and as soon as that happened, I was using Polaroids and other formats to get ideas or be creative. Looks like we've lost Carla here. Perhaps the dog needed to get its meds. Oh, we lost Carla's audio.
No, I'm here. Yeah,
Oh.
no, I'm here.
Oh, yeah. So, I mean, thank you for saying that, because I was like, it just blew my mind. I was like, that was a time. That was like the last leg of traditional photography. After that, you started having digital cameras and Photoshop, and that became photography.
That's right. Yeah.
I
No,
remember
there's
that
your
lab.
mom. Hi, Mom. Sharon. I see her. She's so sweet. She's a friend of mine now on Facebook.
She's my trooper. She used to show up to every choir from 4th grade into university. All these, 60 kids, la, 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 singing out of tune. She was there. Tap dance classes. She was there at the shows. She was even, I'm going to talk about the aces in a moment. But the first picture I took that eventually led to the idea of that first ace card was from the behind. I was like, I can't get people's time to model for me. My hair's grown long, and I wanted this female shot. I'm like, wait a minute, from the back I can look like a female. And I'm at my parents' house. My dad's watching NASCAR. And I said, hey, Mom, could you come out in the garage a moment? And I set up a camera out there and a white sheet. And I put on this cheap Frederick's Hollywood corset thing, and I just turned my back to the camera. I said, okay, and I did some poses. So I'm like, okay, thanks, Mom. And she went back inside. It was like, no big deal. There was no drama. My son just put on a corset in the garage. It was like, he's doing art. Okay,
That's sweet.
I'll support
You're
him.
so lucky, Kevin.
Very blessed. Very blessed. Thanks, Mom. Big shout out for Sharon. And with the show, she's reaching out to everybody, coast to coast, that might be related to me, 5 generations to tune into the show. And I greatly appreciate that.
Fabulous.
Now, speaking of I'm not going to quite jump to the aces, but I have a part of the show you might not know about called Mystic Moment. And I think we've touched upon this influence.
Kevin, I think Joe needs to get back into the Zoom call.
Oh, okay. I'll get Joe. Okay, Mystic Moment on hold. We're getting Joe back in. Welcome back, Joe.
Aha.
So we've been talking a lot about Barbara DeGeneieve's influence and impact on our lives, challenging us, perhaps pushing us out of our comfort zone, perhaps being so steeped in her philosophy, her mystical journey, and not recognizing that what the impact of that was on people, or not feeling necessarily an ownership, but just to be a change agent, and you do what you will with it. And I want to challenge folks with that idea. and say, I think Barbara made a lot of people go to a place they were scared. And that's why she had the camera turned back on me. When you're not facing yourself, you're hiding from yourself. And she could see that. So in this week's Mystic Moment, I want to put out the question, what scares you? And I don't mean, a stalker pursuing you in their car to your home and doing terrible things with you. That's normal. That's everyday thing. I mean, psychologically scares you. Things that once you do, you're going to step back and say, Mom had no problem with doing that photo shoot in the garage. It wasn't a big deal, but in my head, it was a big deal. All right. Zoom's telling me we have 10 minutes. So you guys think about that in the coming week, about what you might be limiting yourself with through fear. So again, I walked away from a corporate job 1.5 years ago, and that whole career, terrifying. But I had done this enough times in enough ways in my creative career that I could lean back on that to make that transition. So one of the things that Barbara pushed us all on was gender roles. And after doing that photograph from behind and modeling as a woman, reading all these cultural books that break apart gender, break apart power roles and all these things, I was invited to do a gallery show, and we were all to do cards from the poker deck. And if you don't know, the poker deck is based on the tarot deck, minus a few cards. And I wanted to connect that poker deck everyman aspect to the tarot's mystical, intellectual aspect that people like Barbara came from an academic standpoint, or that spiritualists might come from a theoretical, magical standpoint, and also play with mixed gender in it. So I had a friend of mine, who unfortunately couldn't join us tonight, take a series of photographs. Then I had another friend of mine look at a drawing I had made, Jeff Koons style, and sat with the computer to make digital images based on what I had drawn. And those pieces became the 4 aces in my tarot deck. And they got enough notoriety. They led eventually in the late 90s for me getting published in several magazines internationally, and some newspaper articles, and some gallery shows, and really got me that attention that if I hadn't taken that risk, I never would have had those connections. And some of those people that made those connections became close friends, who are still my close friends to this day. One of them whose software company I run. And in the next decade after that, with Queer Blue, with Pixie, we leveraged those relationships, and that band got more band coverage in magazines and websites and newspapers. I believe, because the seed was planted by Barbara back here, to look at gender and create a tension with it. Not just think about androgyny, but think of two genders happening at the same time. And as I dug through my own mystical training in alchemy, I found that there are all these pictures of men with beards and dresses and these sorts of things. And I realized that this all went way back and really connected back to these images, and I didn't even know it at the time. Think about Prince. Prince's first performance, he came out in a thong bikini, black underwear, high heel pumps, playing guitar with a tails jacket. Got attention. Opened doors. David Bowie, he'd done a lot of things, but it was really Ziggy Stardust when he mixed the genders together and made them have attention. That's what really worked. He had long hair, wore men's dresses, no one cared. He did the masculine thing. Okay, some people like that, but it really was when those two came together. So for me, it was these images. Do I still get a little creepy skin showing this to relatives or having them on the show? Yeah, I do. I'm probably a little more of a less out there guy than some of my art might look like. So I'm
What
checking the
isn't
chat.
a label?
What was that?
What is, I mean, it's just about labeling and conforming to the expected of society, a group of people, family. Yeah, it's hard to be different? Is it you, or is it just an exploration of you?
And is there really a true difference? Because it's something you're doing, but yeah, and you explore. And I had long hair once, and then around 99, I cut off my hair, and then I completely changed the character that I was doing photo shoots in to this hyper masculine character. I did some corporate characters, and I did my leather man, my Mr. Super Dominant Leather Man series for about a decade. Those are all aspects of me because I thought about them and I explored them. But do they totally sum up who I am? I'm not a motorcycle riding leather daddy. I'm not. I mean, those images might have elements from those communities and histories in those communities, but I really wanted to do something that was definitely me, but didn't put me in a box.
Did you want to do something that was different than you, though? When you found those alternate Kevins?
I never thought of it that way. I probably another reason why Barbara and I got along is I suffer from some of what she suffered from. This intellectual myopticness, where you're having a thought and that thought leads to another thought, and it has, that really connects to this, that, and thing. And you go down this rabbit hole a day, an hour, but it could be weeks, could be years. And you come out the other side 8 years going, that was interesting. What was that all about? And never really considering. So in some ways that it's almost a naivete that makes it a little easier for me. Except for when I think, oh, that cousin in Oklahoma just tuned in. And I'm showing pictures of me. Okay, move on. You know, there are still little twinges that says that's me too.
It's funny, masculinity, the standards of masculinity defined as trappings in adolescence. I mean, all this thing about the manhood this and manhood that and being a man. In order to be a man, you have to be an adult. And that means fully functioning and thinking and transcending yourself, transcending who and what you are versus what people put, the standards, the double standards that people put you on, the pedestals they put you on. The people in my life that I love the best are the ones that are flawed. You know, lose all the virtuous people. Give me the flawed people. These are the people whose the mask has been torn away. You see their inmost self. You see them who they really are in all their glory, however bad, however good. But at least you know who they are. You see them for real, and you can relate to that because that's the here. That is the here and now in that person and of people.
I like to say, I'd rather be around a person I disagree with who is authentic than someone I agree with that I'm not so sure what's underneath.
My political friends can be like that exactly. Someone I disagree with, but I can have discourse with. Someone that I agree with, but I feel very uneasy because they're going through the moves and they're not being sincere. Yeah, I have no time for it.
I see Carla nodding there. I think we got an amen all around for that one.
It's good to connect with people.
Yeah.
Whatever similars, whatever makes you different, as long as you make a connection.
Discourse is everything. It's the pulse
to
of
me,
life.
it's respect. You know, if someone's respectful, you can believe the moon's made of cheese. But if you're a respectful person, and I say, hey, you might want to read this website about moon dust. And they could take that or leave it. But if they're open to putting stuff out there, cool. If they want to hunt me down and kill me because I don't believe the moon's made of cheese, then I have a problem with that.
It's amazing how many dialogues have little to do with the subject matter at hand, and how many
Yes.
dialogues are subliminal.
Yeah, it's like I literally got into these kind of conversations a year ago with a friend that I'd known for many decades, and it was literally the kind of like the moon's made of cheese, and that's that. And you saying it's might not be made of cheese is a threat to me, and it was literally over very strange minor things. Then I realized, that's who this person is. They might have progressive or conservative thoughts on a given subject, but really they're locked in. They've decided their, as Carla was saying, like gender identity, the world around them, how everything works, and we just lost everybody. I'm going to start a new meeting because this conversation's too good. How you guys doing out there in streaming land? Feel free to make some comments. Is this interesting? I know the initial shows had a lot more singer, songwriter stuff, performance stuff. We were having some technical problems always with the singing along with stuff. So I nixed that for now until we can work that out. This is one of the more conversational episodes and talking about the influences that influence certainly my album covers, influenced the writing of certain songs of Audio Terrorist, and collaborations with Pixie Blue on the Queer Blue albums. I'm letting them know to rejoin. And we are getting up at the 6 o'clock hour, so I'm going to have them rejoin for After Party. So we are moving on to After Party. But before I do that, I do want to show you some more quotes from Barbara. So that was some quotes from Barbara. Some additional quotes. The first quote was covered earlier on, but really showed her focused on her working on her own identity through this process. I sometimes felt like the students were a catalyst for her to create a new identity for herself. That wasn't the identities that she had put herself in and society had put herself in earlier in her life, and to liberate her to be the person that she was, which is an intellectual professor and a photographer. Okay, Zoom is being bad. Try one more time. At first I got frustrated with all the technical problems that the show brings, and now I'm just kind of accepting that it's part of the gig, and it kind of gives a character to the show as I sit here and stall. Good times. All right, they're coming back around. They said they're getting invalid IDs. All right, so if I go out here to this screen, interesting. Folks are messaging, saying, is this how it's supposed to end? Is it still streaming? Interesting. It's still streaming. All right. And I see in the chat here, Carla's trying to get back in. Joe's trying to get back in, saying, is this how it's supposed to end? The answer is no. I'm going to restart Zoom. And this just lets me know that I need to start paying for Zoom. I think the pandemic-free ride of Zoom is over. Folks who haven't, either this is their first episode or they've been watching the episodes, what would you like to see? Would you like to see more music? Would you like to see more background on the lyrics and or the production process? I've been mixing it up so that each episode had a different focus. One was more on composition, one was more on the arts, one was more on music videos, live performance. I'd love to find out what would you like the future episodes to be. My initial batch of episodes I listed out, and those are getting wrapped up probably the next 2 weeks or so. And I really want to know what folks are enjoying, and I can tailor the show one way or the other. Just go ahead and let my mom know, because she is the keeper of this show in so many ways. All right, gonna restart. Mom, are you still out there? I haven't seen a post from you in a while, so that's why I thought the stream maybe had gone down. All right, we got some. It's interesting. The chat bot sometimes lists stuff and other times doesn't. All right, we're getting Carla back. What about Joe? Nice thing about these videos is they're stored on YouTube, so I can go back and edit them later and remove bits like this when the technology kind of creates an issue. Huh, interesting. Zoom says Carla joined twice. Welcome back, Carla.
Oh my gosh, I'm back.
Yeah, I've been resisting paying for Zoom because they've been offering this free deal during the pandemic, and I think they're now done with doing that. They know that they've got people using Zoom, so I will join the monthly subscription so that we don't get interrupted like that in the future. And it's interesting because I have you as joined and joining as two different events, and haven't seen Joe.
I accidentally closed the window, so probably that's why you're seeing me in two different states.
Yeah, if you're here, you're here. And Joe will get back up soon, I'm sure. So I have this thing called After Party, where basically, we've done the hour, we've talked about the course subjects, showed some art, showed some videos, shared some music, etc. And then after parties where we ask some additional questions. I think this is an esoteric enough subject that, I don't expect a bunch of people in the chat room to start saying, what is the deep Lacanian cultural theory of blah, 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 blah. So I more had a question about yourself and art outside of Barbara, because we haven't stayed in touch over the years about creative stuff. Do you still do photography?
No, not as much. So when I started to wear the glasses, it was harder to do art photography. As a graphic designer, I was dedicated and worked really hard at it. And then I realized that I didn't have a life. And so I started to look for, people, things outside of work. And let's see, 2013, I started taking care of my dad. Just prior to that. So probably 2011. And then he passed away in 2013. And so, life happened. And so art really hasn't been a part of that. I am now, during the pandemic, with all this free time, surplus amount of craft materials. I'm revisiting things that just trying to be creative and bring beauty to spaces and places. So right now I am in Rio Oso, California, where my husband has a family orchard, a walnut orchard. And so we spend half of our time up here and then half of the time down in the Bay Area right now. And that's just sort of he retired in 2003. And so he's fortunate to be able to retire, first of all. And second of all, we have this curse and blessing of a ranch. So a lot of creativity, not a lot of it in art, though. But I'm starting to get back to it. I make soap. That's my big thing. I don't know why, but I love handmade soap, so I started making them.
That's creativity. I mean, you're doing chemistry. I mean, I think about it. It's like, oh, there's a lot of photography there. You're dealing with chemicals, or those chemical baths, and mixing and blending, and producing a final creation that people not only interact with I'm soaping. Okay, I need to take a shower. I'm going to wear soap, but you're doing the chemistry so that there's an effect or a reaction. A provocateur. So you are the Barbara DeGeneive of soap.
I will send you some soap. You and your mom. I'll send you your mom some soap too.
Okay. But the same idea. I was saying during the break when you guys were off that I think sometimes Barbara did those things to try to challenge her that Midwest girl in her to stretch herself, and sometimes didn't recognize the impact it might have on the students. Because when I reached out this, I thought, oh, we've got these San Jose State students, we've got our Institute of Chicago students, let's put it out there and see if anybody bites. And it was just the two of us. And I went, oh, interesting.
I don't really know. I mean, I actually was on a call probably about early April with a couple of students from San Jose State, and I just mentioned that casually that I was really upset. And the thing is, I think we all had very different relationships with her, and they were all based sort of on who we were and who we were becoming.
A transitional moment.
She influenced us. I mean, as a teacher, as a mentor, as somebody who was seeing children become adults.
And how do you feel that she's influenced your soap making?
I think that, she's emboldened me to try things. And there have been times thoughts, whatever, that I feel might stifle that, but it prevails.
Nice. Yeah, I think it's kind of what Joe was saying. By the way, Joe's having trouble logging back in too. Kind of what he was saying with his martial arts work and his martial art masters about that sort of being pushed out of your comfort zone. Even if doing gender studies isn't your thing, the experience of being on the edge like that gives you a sense of willingness to try something new. Say, hey, soap. I'm not getting any support from my soap making here. I don't care.
Yeah,
I'm going to do it.
My next thing, actually another little technical thing that I really like is drones. So I have 2 small, inexpensive drones that I'm learning how to fly. And so I want to do more of that kind of, video, and then that create, a little bit of video editing. So I like that.
and you could bring the walnuts in on it. You can have like walnut soap, and then do a fly through of the walnut orchard.
The walnuts. Yeah, I'll send you some walnuts.
Well, you might not know my parents' background, but my mom's parents came from Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl and settled in Central California to pick cotton. And my father's family, a little over 100 years ago, came from the Azores, what I like to call the Hawaii of Portugal. And they came over into California, and they bought two things: dairy farms and almond orchards. So the Duarts and the Manise did a lot of that stuff out in the Central Valley. So both my parents are from the Central Valley, California, which is kind of like the Oklahoma of the West. And and really, we're either farm laborers or farm owners. And so that's their background. So yeah, almonds, and our backyard in suburban San Jose was always an orchard with fruit trees and corn rows. And the kid next door's got a swimming pool, but we've got corn rows.
Yes.
My dad was always like, the stuff in the store doesn't have any taste. There's certain things you have to grow yourself.
Yeah, and I can see that in the walnuts when we eat them fresh, and then maybe people buy 10-pound bags of them at Costco. They're rancid by that time.
Yeah, food does not last forever, folks. I don't know why Joe hasn't been able to rejoin, but that was the question I wanted to ask is, how that had a lasting influence on your life. And it's just interesting to think for ourselves, how have we influenced other people in similar ways that had a lasting influence that we might not even know about? That's always fascinates me.
That's going to take a little bit of thought. I mean, maybe some of the people that are watching this on Facebook or other platforms might be able to share some of their thoughts. I feel like we're missing this type of participation a little bit. I'm not deflecting, but I kind of am.
Well, I've got a cousin just joined, so I'm going to type into the question. Any questions for Carla or I? It's funny because I found people, they love the chat to say hi to each other, but they really want to listen and sort of absorb what's coming out. The interactivity hasn't been as strong as I expected. And 2 years ago, I did the first of a series of presentations at a music conference, and I wanted it to be about everybody in the room. So each one of us on the panel told our stories about some key moment that changed their music development outlook forever. And mine was discovering karaoke, and then discovering that I could do my own stuff at karaoke secretly because it's taboo. And suddenly I was doing tour concerts in Europe and around the United States because all I had to do was get my karaoke files in there in advance, and then I could perform my own music for an audience. And that was really groundbreaking for me. And I thought, well, now we'll put it out to the audience. They're going to have stories too. Oh my God. Every sphincter snapped shut with a click, mouth zipped. Everybody got really nervous. You could just feel the whole room, all the fun and excitement of everything that had been going on halted. And I realized, okay, not everybody wants to present or talk about stuff. And a lot of people come to just observe, absorb, and take that away and think about it.
Yeah, I am not very good at talking about myself, and I haven't gotten better at it. Let's just put it that way.
I heard that hesitancy when I was first proposing this session, but yet here you are.
I'm playing. Yeah, I feel like I'm playing a little bit of a co-host. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. And you know what? Even if no one's listening and my little weekly show goes nowhere, it's getting me to organize around the house, like, old videotapes and pictures and engage and chat with old friends that I might not have chatted in years. And it's been really cool.
So let me ask you this. Now you have your art, you have your work. You have your show that you compile and put together. What do you do? Like, do you have any downtime?
Oh, that's a loaded question. You should ask my wife. I don't. I don't really. I don't think I'm designed for downtime. Downtime is once I get myself. Downtime is usually like in the afternoon between 2 and 4. I'll get a doldrums where I'm not always productive, and I'll just watch some YouTube videos and lie there. And then when sleep eventually comes, and I do tend to get 7 to 8 hours sleep a night, but sometimes it's 4 hours of sleep, then up at midnight to 3 a.m., and then 4 hours again. That's one aspect of not being in the corporate environment is I let each day kind of unfold how my body wants it. And what I'm learning about that is my body is not consistent with its rhythms. It has one thought and one thought only. And do I feel up to doing something? And I'd say, hey, if it's 2 in the afternoon, you're feeling the doldrums, you ate too much ramen and beer for lunch or whatever, give yourself a rest. It's okay. So I do give myself breaks like that, but as soon as I feel that energy coming back up, I've got my laundry list of stuff I'd like to do. So yeah, I don't think I'm. Oh, and we have a balcony here. So my wife bought a townhouse just out of Seattle, and behind us is a beautiful greenway. So we have a balcony on the second floor and back, and I can go out there, and we've put a swing on the porch back there, and I can just sit there and swing and listen to the wind in the trees and see some birds fly through and stuff like that. I will note it's kind of creepy up here, though, because there's almost no life. There's all this woodland, and there's no squirrels. We see like one squirrel a week, and we're in a wooded area, which seems odd to me. We do see crows. There's a fair amount of crows. Some little birds fly by. We've taken to doing these hour walks through the hills and the woods around here, and we have now a point system about animal spotting. And the most common animal is wild rabbit. Not cats,
Wow.
not squirrels. We've only seen a group of squirrels playing once in 6 months. It was over an apartment complex where there was a lawn. It's interesting because being in Berkeley and Oakland, that area for probably the longest period of my life, there's tons of them. You walk by a redwood tree, there's squirrels throwing each other off of branches and playing and whatnot. But the bunnies, my wife's happy about the bunny factor because she's now counting them to get 5 points for each bunny. And I think we've gotten up to 8 bunnies in one walk.
That's cute. But they do multiply. So,
They do. And at night, I think we hear who maybe is keeping the cats down because I've only seen 2 cats in the same time period because I think they get chomped up because we do hear coyotes at night.
Mm-hmm. Yes. The coyotes are pretty. They're pretty strong animals. We have them too in Millbrae, and sometimes I've seen them in the middle of the street looking constipated, and then the other times I've seen them up against our fence, like looking like they're going to blow the house down.
Interesting. In Millbrae, I guess you're far enough out there that it's wooded enough. You've got the mountains behind that.
Just right off of the watershed, and then there's like an open space. So there's like a green belt basically behind our house.
Nope.
We're fortunate.
I'm putting panels. I thought I'd open up a side panel, but instead it put panels in front of your face. Yeah, this spot's a blessed spot. Before this, I was in Marin for 5 years. And
right.
even though I was downtown, San Rafael is their big town. It still was a fairly small town, very, very provincial area, a lot of country. So you definitely would get some wildlife, a lot of deer coming through the city and whatnot. I haven't seen a. I think I saw one deer once. It was dead on the freeway. And it's beautiful woods here, so I expect to see Bambi and all of her friends run around in the backyard, and I'll stay on the swing maybe 5-10 minutes before I'm bored, and then I'm like, okay, I got to go work on something. Getting back to your original question.
Your mom is asking me a question, and now
Okay.
So what else can I do to help you with your show?
Oh.
I mean, are there more Barbara questions to ask or talk about?
We're an after party, which is just us chatting. I covered all the stuff about her influence on our lives and showing some of her work during an episode, and I think we really covered that. James says he's enjoying the show, came in. Cool, that's great, James, because I know you tuned in originally to hear my music, mainly my country rock stuff. You've listened to some of my heavier rock stuff and like that too. So I wasn't really sure about these sort of philosophical art chat sessions and whether or not they would hold up. But really, like I said, it's giving me an opportunity to get to talk about things I haven't necessarily talked about in some years and get to see people and say thank you for your impact on my career, my life, and, stuff like that.
I think it's a good time to reflect. I feel, I hope in a weird way that we come out a little better, a little stronger, and a little wiser.
I'm just going to pause and let that sink in. Yes. Yes. That was well put there. Yeah. I can't hope for anything more than what you just said. If we get that, we're good.
Yes, I agree.
I was wanting Joe to be able to say bye to us, but he says he's getting invalid ID every time he tries to get in. Oh, and there's Ring barking away. We're on a little side street, so the Ring sees whenever someone goes dog walking. So I put it on bark. That's our dog alert, and there's our favorite dog. Don't tell the other ones. A few houses down named Coconut. That's this big, poofy, medium-size, white, poofy fur ball that's smiling all the time. And so when Coconut goes by, my wife and I will yell Coconut, and then we run to the windows. So we're kind of a Coconut fan. So that's all I had on that. I don't see any comments specifically about Barbara or anybody that joined specifically on that subject. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, including yours, Carla. Thank you so much for taking this time for us to reminisce about a period in our lives that maybe opened some doors, maybe gave us some opportunities that informed us, and then we got to pick and choose what we did with that as our lives have gone merrily on. I look forward to being in touch with you offline. We get the soap going. We get the walnuts going. My dad's allergic to nuts, so I think my mom's going to have to skip it. But I don't know if it's because he eats almonds. He's allergic to most nuts. So I'll check with my mom about the walnuts.
We got figs, we got pomegranates, we got persimmons.
Oh,
don't worry, it's a party
language
all summer long.
I love it.
But I did want to thank you because, I just want to say when you first contacted me about this, it was hard for me to address this little issue, I guess, with my feelings or to summarize them, I should say. It was difficult to think about Barbara in a way that good, bad, or indifferent. It was just hard to think about her, to be honest with you. And I feel a lot better having had the chance to talk about it. Thank you.
Awesome. You're welcome. That's the giving that all of us need to just focus on that. Everything else will come. Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Carla. I'm going to hit the last screen, which is my contact screen for folks that are into music. I've got 3 bands. Caleb, which is alternate country rock and folk project. Audio Terrorist, a goth industrial sort of dark electronic 80s sound. Cuir Bleu, which is a similar band, but is a little more peppy with a female singer. And we have YouTube channels for all three of those band projects. You can find me on Facebook. If you'd like to follow up on the discussion that we had today, any comments, any thoughts about how we could shape a show, as I've mentioned on earlier shows, I committed to a dear friend of mine to do this every single weekend for 1 year and to see the result of that. And I must admit, I'm starting to think, what do I do next week? And every time I think that, something new pops up, like Carla being willing to do this barber show. If she had, honestly, Carla, if you had said, nah, no way, I would have just passed on this show. Because I'd say, hey, there's no guests. And I'm not going to sit here just talking about Barbara. Okay. So thank you so much for that. And going to wrap up this week. We'll be in touch out on the internets. And glad it was a good experience.
All right.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Was I right to think you would want to play? 'Cause something makes you stay and you're mine. I think you just like it this way. When I bring you pleasure and pain, some may say it can't be okay, but I say it's just a game we play. Pleasure and pain, pleasure. Is it cruel to use you when I like? Do you think that I might bring you pleasure? Does it hurt in all of the right ways? Is that why you stay and we're together? I think you just like it this way. measure pain. Measure